Let's say you were a pilot in the early years of World War II. You are flying an open cockpit aircraft because aviation technology has not quite reached the era of comfort yet. There is no cabin, no sealed glass, no climate control. Just you, the wind, a rattling machine, and a paper map that immediately wants to dissolve like cheap tissue every time humidity looks at it. And you cannot whip out Google Maps. You cannot even ask a tower for directions because half the time radio communication sounds like someone gargling metal. You have one job: do not get lost and do not let your map turn into soggy origami. So how did pilots keep these things dry while flying through rain, snow, sea spray, and airstreams strong enough to rip your gloves off the moment you loosen your grip? The answer is a combination of preparation, engineering, improvisation, and some techniques that today would get you roasted on aviation Reddit. First, the maps themselves were not ordinary paper. Air forces knew the problem early, so they printed maps on linen-backed sheets. The fabric layer gave them strength and some water resistance. The British Air Ministry also used silk, yes, actual silk, smooth, durable, lightweight, and it did not soak up water. It folded into tiny sizes and could survive a dive into the sea better than the pilot could. You know how people today brag about their waterproof phone cases? Pilots in World War II had waterproof maps sewn from the same material as parachutes. Your iPhone case looks insecure now, but the map paper was only the first step. Pilots needed protection during flight, so enter the map board. This was not fancy. It was literally a wooden or metal clipboard with a transparent celluloid cover. Celluloid was the old-world version of plastic. It scratched easily, smelled funny when warm, and was slightly flammable, which is not ideal when your job already involves gasoline, but it kept the rain off. Pilots clipped their maps under this sheet, strapped the board to their thigh, and hoped turbulence did not send the entire thing flying into the slipstream. Thigh boards became standard for RAF and USAAF pilots. It looked simple, but it was practical. It kept the map flat, protected, and close to the body, where wind force was reduced. If you did not have a thigh board, you improvised. Some pilots folded maps into sealed, waxed pouches. Others rolled them into tubes and stuffed them inside their jackets until needed. Soviet pilots sometimes wrapped maps in oilcloth because it was cheap and water-resistant. They were basically using the military version of takeout packaging. During naval operations, like in the Pacific, American pilots had to deal with saltwater spray. Saltwater did not just wet the maps, it warped them, so crews coated maps with a thin layer of paraffin to repel moisture. This worked well. It also made them feel slightly greasy. But pilots were not exactly attending job interviews mid-flight, so it was fine. Then there was the cockpit workflow. Pilots learned not to expose the entire map at once. They folded it to the current sector only. Less exposure meant less chance of damage. It also meant that if a stray gust ripped half the sheet off, only half your flight plan was destroyed instead of all of it. Small victories. Some aircraft actually helped. Early Spitfires and Hurricanes had partial windscreens that diverted airflow. Not enough to keep you warm, but enough that paper would not evaporate into the sky. But open cockpit biplanes, like the Swordfish, were still basically flying motorcycles. In those, pilots kept maps inside small canvas map cases mounted in the cockpit. You opened it only when absolutely necessary. Otherwise, nature would confiscate your navigation aids. And of course, there were the backup methods. Pilots memorized large portions of their route before takeoff. They studied coastline shapes, river forks, rail lines, and city outlines. Because if the map failed, you were relying on your brain. Or as modern navigation experts call it, offline mode. Real history also includes some very unglamorous moments. There are reports of pilots sitting on their maps to keep them dry until needed. There are reports of pilots biting the map to hold it while adjusting controls. There are reports of the map turning into a sticky pulp after heavy rain, forcing a return to base guided only by landmarks. Flying was not romantic. It was high-speed paperwork in terrible weather. Yet the fact remains, World War II pilots managed to keep fragile maps dry in conditions that could destroy most objects. They did it with layered materials, early plastic sheets, folding strategies, and pure stubborn habit. And the next time someone complains about their phone getting smudged, remind them that pilots once fought air combat while trying to read a linen silk paraffin-coated sheet under a celluloid window strapped to their thigh at 200 miles per hour. They managed, And they did it while being shot at.